In a desperate attempt to prove she has the chops to take on perhaps the world's most consequential job, Kamala Harris has committed herself to sitting down for a gauntlet of really tough interviews with some of the country's most respected intellectual giants. People like Stephen Colbert, The View gaggle, and perversion royalty Howard Stern and the Call Her Daddy podcast. That lineup alone tells you just how seriously Harris is taking this job. Because I'll tell you, nothing screams competence, aptitude, and a laser-like focus on serving the needs of the American people quite like sitting down in the wake of the grief and horror of Hurricane Helene and joking about tampons.
I have seen girls on the street walk up to men and be like, do you know where a tampon goes? Do you know how many tampons we use?
Perhaps noticing the jaw-dropping tone deafness there, former comedian turned left-wing shill Stephen Colbert tried to bail her out by teeing her up with the softest of softball questions.
What is it that is, to coin a phrase, great about America?
Dude, think of all of the answers that you and I could give on the spot to a question like that. Football, religious freedom, grocery stores, shopping malls, the vast openness and grandeur of our geography, our political stability, rock and roll. The list is potentially endless. But all Harris is capable of doing is spit out memorized, repetitive lines that don't come close to answering the simple question.
In particular, in these years where we have witnessed so-called leaders attempting to create division between us. People who, when people are out there protesting, you know what? God love them, because we have a nation that says that we will allow freedom of speech, freedom of association.
May you watch these things and you start realizing why Harris had the lowest approval rating of any modern vice president. Why just a few months ago, Democrats were begging Joe Biden to dump her from the ticket. You get why her staff is paralyzed at the thought of her doing actual interviews with actual journalists. And by the way, those fears were fully realized when Harris agreed to sit down with 60 Minutes. If she wasn't running against Donald Trump, that interview would have ended her campaign. It was that bad.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel.
What? Look, I'm not being rude, but were adult beverages involved here?
That were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
Look, I don't care what your politics are. We're all human here, and we can all see that isn't normal. You can pretend like you're not, but every time this woman speaks, we are all channeling Jim Carrey.
What the are you talking about?
And it got worse still. Despite being given months to come up with a reasonable answer to the issue, here's Harris being pressed on what is currently the country's biggest crisis.
The policies that we have been proposing are about fixing a problem, not promoting a problem. Okay?
But the numbers did quadruple.
And the numbers today, because of what we have done, we have cut the flow of illegal immigration by half.
Okay, I'm not being rude, and I'm no mathematician, but if you cut that in half, it's still doubled, right? Oh, don't worry, fellow shipmates. I ripped a giant hole in the hull of our boat, but I've managed to repair half of it.
It's a long-standing problem, and solutions are at hand. And from day one, literally, we have been offering solutions.
You know that Miss Harris was sitting there looking at Whitaker thinking, hey, when does the tampon question come up? I'm ready for it, Bill. Instead, he asked her how she plans to pay for her economic ideas. And I bet you know how that went.
I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes.
Okay, stop. We hear this every election cycle. What is a fair share? Can someone explain that to me? How much is fair? The government confiscating nearly half of the productivity of a person isn't enough? Apparently not.
It is not right that teachers and nurses and firefighters are paying a higher tax rate than billionaires.
Okay, wait. I have some wealthy friends. They're paying over 40% of what they make to the government. I'm a teacher. I'm not paying close to that. And neither is my sister-in-law, who is a nurse. And neither is our family friend, who is a firefighter. This just isn't remotely true. Look, I understand that there are plenty of people who are panicked about another Trump term. They don't like him and they don't want him. But that shouldn't preclude anyone from looking at this alternative of Kamala Harris and saying, okay, come on. Can we all just go back to when half of us weren't pretending that we don't know what we all knew just like 5 minutes ago? You know and I know. She is not cut out for this.
The American people are ready to turn the page.
On that, Madam Vice President, I couldn't agree more.